Everyone, welcome to our Housing 101 series, where today we are going to be talking about parent questions and answers. So we have lots of information for you here and lots of things that we hope that you find is helpful. But first, we're going to go ahead and get started and introduce ourselves. First, my name is Shannon Jordan. I'm the Senior Associate Director of University Housing for Residence Life, and I worked at Appalachian for 9 years. And I'm here with my colleague, Alicia, who will go ahead and introduce herself.
And my name is Dr. Alicia Vest. I'm the Associate Director for University Housing for Student and Administrative Services. So all of the marketing, communication, technology, all of your students' assignments, and some of those other general administrative tasks fall out of my area. And I have been at Appalachian for 15 years.
Well, today we're going to be talking about several different things that we know are hot topics for parents. So we're going to be talking about building placements and what that looks like, and we'll try to incorporate some of your questions regarding the housing application so that you have all of that information. And I know that can be a little bit confusing. We're also going to talk about our residence halls and COVID-19. We know that, of course, people are wondering about what procedures we're implementing and changes there. So we'll go ahead and talk about that as well. Well, we're also going to talk about our move-in process and what that will look like, and what that will look like in general, in addition to what that will look like with COVID-19 procedures in place. We're also going to talk a little bit about safety and living on campus, as well as roommates. There's lots of information for us to share in terms of roommates. So Alicia and I are going to tag team and give you our best thoughts and advice regarding roommates. And then we're also going to talk about your concerns in terms of what if your student calls you once they're on campus and they're not connecting and making friends with others, or there's other challenges to navigate. We'll give you some of our advice related to those things. And so that is our plan for today. So as promised, first, we're going to go ahead and talk about buildings and placement and housing assignments, and Alicia's going to cover that.
So we have already begun to get all of the questions about where am I going to live? When am I going to find out where I'm going to live? When am I going to find out my roommate? What does that look like? So to let you know, we're at that June 5th mark as of today. And so we are still accepting housing applications for our new incoming first-year students. And we'll continue to accept them as you continue to complete your enrollment steps. However, the option to edit already completed applications did end this last weekend, so that we can actually start the assignment process and not continue to have to move students around multiple times based on any changes they may make. So the housing application is pretty general. We do ask some lifestyle questions to make sure that we're pairing your student to the best of our ability with an appropriate roommate if they haven't already chosen one. And also the contracting part is in the application. And so contracts can be a little confusing for our families sometimes. So if a student is 18 years old when they complete their housing application, they'll sign their contract within their application. And on the bottom of that page, there is a submit button. In order for that to be marked complete, they need to go all the way through and make sure they are hitting that submit application after they've signed that contract. For students who are not 18 or under the age of 18, when they sign their housing contract, regardless of their age, when they come to join us in August, if they sign their contract when they're under 18, then they'll also need a parent or guardian signature in order to make all of that legal. And so it is going to send that contract to the email the student listed for their emergency contact information in their contract, in their application. And so we have posted that in as many places as we can find. And so if your student still has an incomplete application, it says it's still waiting for a contract signature, make sure that we have the correct email address. Sometimes somebody has accidentally hit a comma instead of a period, or an incorrect letter in that email, and so it has been sent to an email that maybe doesn't exist. So to make sure that that's complete, please be in contact with us via email, and we'll make sure to get that resent to you. So housing assignments will come out in mid-July. We generally say mid to late July. We try to get them out generally right about the same time that fall bills go out. So we work closely with the Office of Student Accounts to make sure that the assignments are done so that they appear on your fall bill, provided you have applied for housing by then. Approximate dates of move-in, we will be talking more about move-in here in a little bit, but we are anticipating move-in obviously to be the week prior to classes starting in August. And so your student in their housing assignment email will receive their move-in date and time. It's going to be spread out over more days than it has been in the past, and so we do ask families to be flexible as you're starting to make plans to come up to Boone, because you might be across any one of 4 days across, different times of the day. And so make sure to build some flexibility into your schedule that week, since those will be assigned. The other big important piece when it comes to assignments is that we need to make sure that we're meeting your student's needs to the best of our ability. So if your student has a specific need for a specific type of housing, a great example is something as simple as air conditioning. Here in the mountains, not all of our halls have air conditioning. And so if we don't know that your student might need such a thing from a physical accommodation standpoint, we won't know to make sure that they have it. So all of our housing accommodations go through the Office of Disability Resources. Here in the assignments office, we are not really authorized, nor are we trained to read medical documentation. And so we work very closely with the Office of Disability Resources to make sure that they're reviewing accommodation requests, and then they let us know what requests need to be met and how to best meet them. Obviously, if you wait until you get your assignment and say, oh, we forgot to say that we need this, it might be too late because we are full at that point and may not have another space to move your student. The same is true with gender considerations. And so if your student needs their gender to be taken into account for their housing placement, it is important that they let us know. That form is found in our AppSync portal. We've recently changed the name of that to Engage. And so as your student navigates the different websites, if they are in the Intercultural Student Affairs website, under resources, they'll find the gender consideration form, and they can fill that out and let us know what they might need in terms of their housing accommodations. So I did mention there are some differences in our housing types in our communities. And so there are pros and cons to everywhere that you might live on campus. We generally receive those emails and those phone calls that say, there's no way I can live in this hall because it's a tower style, it doesn't have air conditioning, it's not new, I'll never be able to handle it. We had a student post that on social media last year, and 87 comments of other students said, it sounds really bad at first, but this was the best experience of my life. Because these are the students whose doors are always open to get a cross breeze the first couple weeks of classes. They're hanging out in their lounges and lobbies, so they have a little bit more space. And they're still living together when they're seniors in apartments off campus because they've gotten to know each other so well. Our more renovated halls on the east side of campus are also traditional halls. Most of our incoming freshmen will live in traditional halls. And so it's important to think about, you will share a space with another student. You will walk down the hallway to use a common bathroom. And so what kinds of things do you need to prepare yourself for and bring with you to make that your reality? We do in the housing application ask for a housing preference. We ask if you want to live in a traditional or a suite style. Unfortunately, it doesn't mean that we will be able to place everybody who wants a suite style housing in suite style housing. There are simply not enough of those bed types in our inventory yet. The reason we really ask that is because there is a cost difference. And so it's important as you're looking through, you can check our website and check the different cost options. Traditional housing is going to be cheaper and more budget friendly for a number of our students and families. And so if you choose traditional, we'll make sure you're in traditional to best meet your financial needs. And then we'll continue to move through those preferences at that point. We do not take into account your application date. And so assignments are done randomly. We will take into account your roommate preference if you chose one, your residential learning community if you've applied for one and been accepted, and we will take into account that traditional versus suite for those who preference a traditional housing option. And obviously we will meet all accommodations as we can, working with the Office of Disability Resources. And so those are the general pieces to look for and to hear about as we're looking at putting out assignments here in July and how your student might be housed. And so we look forward to sort of hitting that big red button on auto allocate day and just letting the system, place our students after we've taken care of some of these special populations. And then they will arrive to campus here in August. And so Shannon's going to talk a little bit about, the residence halls and what changes we're expecting this fall with COVID-19.
Awesome. Thanks, Alicia. Well, we know as parents, you have so many questions about all things with taking your student to college, but a big question is probably related to COVID-19. And so we wanted to spend some time talking about things that we have changed and things that will look differently. So for those of you that it's your first student going away to college, you're wondering what residence hall life is like in particular in 2020. But a lot of the changes that we're implementing, we hope to keep students building community and making connections while still keeping them safe and healthy. And that is our first priority that we want you to know about. So we are following guidance by the CDC, by our local health officials, by other professional organizations who oversee campus facilities and campus housing. And we are listening, we are implementing, and we are making sure that we are implementing all best practices that we need to. Also, the state of North Carolina and the university system of North Carolina also gives us guidance. And so we are working with all of our sister institutions in the system to make sure that we're following all of the guidelines necessary. So the biggest change that we're making is increased cleaning protocols, and hopefully that's common sense to folks, but our increased cleaning protocols really fall not only on our housekeepers, but are also going to fall on other staff members that we have. So for instance, we're going to ask resident assistants and night assistants, on their rounds to take some sanitizing wipes and clean touch points, but also our housekeeping staff, they are really going to focus in on cleaning all of those high touch areas, like crash bars going into buildings, elevator buttons, of course, bathrooms, common area spaces. Those sort of things are on the forefront of our minds, and we're taking those very seriously. We've purchased new innovative cleaning equipment that is out there that will make this job easier, but still we want you to know that we are focused on our cleaning protocols. Also, we have expectations of our students, and I think that this is something really important that you need to talk with your student about before they move in. In that, we want them to be a participating member of our community, and being a participating member of our community means thinking about others. And so that means face coverings are going to be something that are highly suggested. So Appalachian is purchasing face masks for all of our students. But of course, if you would like to send your student with more face masks, you are welcome to do so. The ones that we are giving students are washable, of course. And we are going to have signage that will remind your students to wear those face masks. We will have our staff talk to students about the importance of wearing face masks. And students will be asked to wear those whenever they cannot physically distance 6 feet from others. So if they walk out the front door of the building and there's nobody around, they can take that face mask off. But we ask if they're going into a space where there's lots of other students that they are wearing those face masks. Also, I mentioned signage earlier, but we're going to have lots of signage about social distancing. We are going to limit the amount of furniture that is in our lobbies. So we're not going to have lobby spaces where lots and lots of students congregate like we have in the past. And it's really hard for me as a housing professional to kind of shake that concept of community, because when I think of a healthy, thriving community, a lot of times I think of a lot of people gathering together in the lobby, and we really need to limit that. And so we are taking away a lot of the furniture, and again, the signage will remind students to not congregate together in large groups. Also, we are going to focus on the messaging about washing hands and following proper hygiene. And if you don't feel well, you need to stay in your room. And also, our student health services is prepared to work with students who are not feeling well, and we'll do testing, and we'll make sure that your student is taken care of here from a medical perspective here on campus. And our residence hall staff will make sure that they connect folks to the correct medical personnel if they're experiencing a medical event when they're with us. So please rest assured that we are taking many, many different precautions, but we are also here to help your students should they get ill. Also, I mentioned our lobbies and community spaces, but as a part of my job, I think about how our students can make connections, how our students can come to love Appalachian and want to be at Appalachian and make a lot of friends. And all of that goes into how we build community. And a lot of the community building events that we are going to have in the residence halls will be virtual. It sounds a little bit strange for me to say, but our floor meetings, so we have floors with students that are 40 strong and even larger, and we can't ask them to gather in one community space. So our resident assistants are going to facilitate Zoom, which is an online platform for folks to gather and see each other. So we're going to have floor meetings via an online platform. We're going to ask our resident assistants, who are the undergraduate staff members whose sole job is to get to know your student and focus on building community. We're going to ask them to get creative. So maybe they do some some passive programming, which means programming up on our bulletin boards or different things that students can get to know one another without being physically in the same space. We know this will be difficult. It's not ideal, but we're going to work toward that. We're also going to ask our students or our resident assistants to work with students in small groups. So whatever our guidance is in North Carolina come August, that is the group size that we will work with. So if it's a group size of 10, we will make that happen. If it's a group size of 20, we will make that happen too. Our first priority is safety for both your student and for our staff members. Also, our partnership with Student Health Services is really valuable to us. And so we are in meetings, we are creating protocols, we are making sure that we have all of our I's dotted and our T's crossed in terms of what if a student does become sick and ill, and we are crafting all of those protocols. As we talk, things are ever changing and evolving, and so I know that you might ask, you might have a lot of what if questions, and Alicia and I might not be providing a lot of those answers to those what if questions, but a lot of that information is being carefully created by our campus and authorities at the state level. So if you have specific questions that you feel like really impact your family's just ability to rest well at night, knowing that you're sending your child away, we really ask that you contact us. Our email address is housing@appstate.edu. So you can contact us with any family-specific questions you have, and we will be more than happy to provide the most up-to-date information that we have regarding COVID-19 in our halls. So Alicia, you're going to talk about move-in next, which I know is probably the second most thing that people are thinking about behind COVID. So I'll let you share what we're doing in terms of move-in.
All right, so move-in is one of those big processes that we have that is very specifically affected by COVID and what those guidelines are going to be. And so we are already getting lots of questions about what day will I move in and when will I move in and what do I bring and all of those pieces. And we are working on it. That is the best answer right now. We do have an anticipated plan, and so the basics of that, as I shared earlier, will be a multi-day move-in with specifically scheduled times for your arrival. Unfortunately, with 6,000 students plus living on campus, unfortunately, we won't be able to manage the process to accept requests for specific days and times. And so we will ask that you plan to be flexible. You'll have about a month to plan after assignments go out to come as your student is scheduled. The piece that's probably going to be the hardest for everyone to hear and to manage is that we are asking that if a student is driving themselves, that they come alone on move-in day. If they're not driving themselves, we're asking that only one support person comes with the student if necessary. And so that feels very different and strange than you've ever thought about dropping your student off at college, whether it's your first student going to college, your last student going to college, and you're going to become empty nesters, or maybe it's somewhere in the middle. It may not feel the same as it has if you've had other students already come to a college campus. That is important though, because we are trying to manage moving 6,000 students in with social and physical distancing. And so having all students come that are going to the same floors and the same elevators and the same stairwells at the same time, we really do need to reduce the number of people who are on campus. So there are some important things to think about, and you have from now until August to really think these through and make your list and talk to your student. In the past, I've always advised families to have conversations before move-in day, because move-in day has always been a little bit emotional. Everyone's generally a little bit cranky because they're going to get hot and sweaty. It will always rain a little bit. And there's sort of that push and pull of independence and saying goodbyes. And so it's really never been a good day for advice giving anyway. And so what we're asking for you to do this summer especially is think about what are those things, those pieces of wisdom that you definitely want to impart on your student, and do that now. Take a walk around your neighborhood, go for a drive. You can pretend you're coming to Boone on that drive, fight over radio stations, what have you. But really think about having those conversations now. What advice do you want to give your student? How do you plan to communicate with each other? I am much older than the traditional college student, and I still talk to my mother once a week on Sunday mornings. She knows that this is when we're going to talk. This is what we have figured out. Now, I know most of you probably communicate with your students a little bit more than that. I'm from a different generation. But what are your expectations for how you're going to communicate with each other, and how often, and how much money can I spend? And, what is my major going to be? How am I going to figure these things out? Other things about how am I going to decorate my room, right? Many of you may have that picture in your head of making your students' bed and helping them decorate so you know exactly what it looks like. I am sure they will be happy to send you some snapshots and pictures if you ask for it, and you can still give advice. But maybe, if you're still into Pinterest, or if you want to check out our Room of the Year contest on Facebook from previous years, you can see ideas about maybe how to set things up, some things to bring, those types of pieces, and have those conversations now, because unfortunately we are unable to invite all of our families to join us on move-in day this year. So some of those precautions that we're looking at for COVID-19, unfortunately there will not be a huge number or any number of move-in volunteers to assist you with your move. So students and their support person will be moving students in themselves. We don't have, giant supplies of water bottles, and we don't have giant supplies of snacks. We don't have any of those sort of opening day frills, because we really do need to limit the interactions people are having with each other. We're going to ask, there will be a limit on how many people can be in an elevator at any given time. We're going to ask that this particular stairwell is for up only, and this one is for down only. And if at all possible, if you're physically able to, please take the stairs. So we will be taking precautions. We will still have some move-in carts available. They'll be wiped down between uses as they move from family to family. They will be disinfected in between those, but it's going to look very different. Depending on where your student is assigned, they might actually be starting off in a parking lot. We do have some areas of campus that don't have great drop-off zones where we can have a number of cars for any period of time, and so we'll be sort of staging in a parking lot and releasing them as those driveways become available for drop-off. So it's going to look very different. And so if you've heard from families in the past that, this is super easy, I didn't have to lift a thing, and we had all these volunteers, unfortunately, it's going to look different this year, and it will be spread out over more days. The other piece about that, other than bringing fewer people, is that we are asking students to bring fewer things, if at all possible. Based on move-in setup this year, we're asking for no U-Hauls and no trailers, especially as we need to work through the construction and some different pieces that are happening on campus. We may not be able to get that vehicle to where it needs to be in order to drop those belongings off. There are a lot of unknowns for the fall semester right now. And so we are asking that students bring enough that they can create their home here on campus, but really to only bring what they need to, in case they need to move to a different space at some time, or as they look to heading home at the end of the semester, and some of the changes that the university has announced in terms of their calendar. And so with those unknowns, if it's something that really you're not sure you're ever going to need while you're here in Boone, maybe it's time to leave that at home, and then the next time you go home, if you find out it's something you really need, you can go ahead and bring it at that point. So again, move-in day is going to look different, but it really is about the safety of our community and the safety of your student. And speaking of safety, we still have all the other safety protocols outside of COVID that we want to talk to you a little bit about, because those are also pretty common questions we get from our parents and our families. So I'll turn it back to Shannon.
Yeah, we do have a lot of safety protocols. So I want to run through some of those resources really quickly for you, because I know that that's another element that you as a parent have lots of questions about. So the first tip that I can give you, and this is going to get into my larger point, is that when after your student is settled and when they arrive, please ask your student or remind your student to go to the front doors of their building and put the resident assistant on duty telephone number into their phone. This RA, we have an RA on duty every single night. And that RA on duty is the gateway to get them the help and the resources that they need if they ever find that they are in a crisis situation or they see something that needs to be reported. So that number should definitely be something that is in your student's phone. Sometimes parents like to put that number in their phones, but our RAs, they are trained to work more with students and not necessarily parents. And so we ask that that number is in your student's phone, and that if you have a particular question, if you want to put our central office number for housing in your phone, and that number is 828-262-2160, you can put that in your phone and you can speak with one of our professional staff members. But we'll talk about parent questions to staff members in a little bit later on in this presentation. But our duty structure is very robust. So of course we have our undergraduate resident assistants who are on duty, and they handle a lot of things that can easily be taken care of, whether it's noise violations or alcohol situations or those sort of things. Our RAs, of course, are not alone. We have another layer of our on-call system, which is our graduate assistants on duty. Our graduate assistants are graduate students who are pursuing a master's degree at the university and are running halls and have advanced responsibilities. So if the RAs need help, those graduate assistants on duty are able to help them. We have yet another layer, and we have a professional staff member on call as well to help in a wide array of situations. And then also, we partner closely with our Dean of Students office, and our Dean of Students office is also on call. And they really help us in terms of if a student needs to be hospitalized or there's something that's quite large that's going on, it's very helpful to have a Dean of Students staff member in those situations to be with the student and to advocate for the student if they do need to go to the hospital or there's another situation going on that they're not physically in the hall. And so there is an enormous amount of care and concern for students that are in crisis situations. And so please encourage your student to put that RA on duty number in their phone. That will be the first step that they need to take should they need anything if they're in a difficult situation. Appalachian State University also has a police department. They are fully sworn in North Carolina police officers, and they are on call 24/7. So they are also another great resource for us. We oftentimes partner in the halls and do programming with our police department. We make sure that we keep those relationships close, and we want you to know that police are there just as much as our staff are there. And then also, I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but we have a great partnership with our Dean of Students office. In our Dean of Students office, they have case managers who work in that office who work with students through difficult situations. So if your student runs into difficulty or they're going through something that's really hard, and our staff, our housing staff, are the first ones to hear about it, we have a referral process that we connect your student to a case manager in the Dean of Students office that can help them navigate on a deeper level resources. But I want to emphasize that it's a community effort to keep our students safe, making sure that they're connected and getting the resources that they need if they ever encounter any difficulty. So if you have specific questions about safety, again, feel free to reach out to us and we will be happy to answer them for you. So next, we're going to talk about a really big hot topic area, and that's roommates. So Alicia's going to kick us off with our first bit of information regarding roommates.
All right. So as I mentioned a little bit earlier, the option to really search and choose your specific roommate ended last weekend, so that we can move forward with the assignments process. And so We will still use those lifestyle questions and try to pair students from a compatibility standpoint, taking into account whether or not they say they go to bed early or late, whether they say they're neat or messy, and some of those pieces. So we do our best to try to help them be compatible in the areas that are typically some points of contention when students maybe aren't getting along living together in a small space. So we will work on that compatibility piece. We also know that a lot of students don't currently share a room with anyone else. And so this whole process is stressful for them, absolutely. And those first impressions are either really exciting or really scary. We do ask, and we know that most of you won't listen, but we do ask that social media not be the first impression students make of their roommates. I don't know about you, but I know that my social media is very rosy. And it might tell you things about me and my family, and things are always great. And these might be some of my views on life and on what's happening in the world and all those things. And there are a lot of assumptions that you might be able to make about me from those things that may or may not be true. Oftentimes we do have students who like to put out a persona that's a little bit more out there than they really live their day-to-day life. And we can also make a lot of assumptions about what's in the background of somebody's photo or, an article they posted or something like that. And that may not be the correct assumption that we're making about that student. So we do say don't let social media be your first impression. Most students are used to interacting with people who are like them, right? Depending on where they've gone to high school and people with whom they see and have relationships with every day, generally they have something in common with them. That's why they became friends. That's why they spend time together. They might have a roommate, however, who's very different from them. Like I said, we're looking at things like what time they go to bed and whether or not they're neat or early. But we're not taking into account things like their hobbies or their music tastes and those types of things. So the goal is that roommates will learn from each other. This is a powerful element of residential living, learning how to live in community, learning from people who are different from you. We will not reassign or move students because they're different from each other. Be completely honest and say we receive these calls every year, and they're the most disappointing calls that we get. And they begin with statements like, I'm not racist, but I'm not homophobic, but I'm not sure that I can live with this other person. And all of that is based on something that they are making an assumption or using a stereotype to think about what it's going to mean to live with this person who is different from them. And so we will always encourage our students to talk on the phone, talk via Zoom, G-chats, whatever they're using prior to moving in together. If you don't get along, it doesn't mean that you have to be best friends. I was never best friends with my freshman roommate, but we lived together just fine. I had my group of friends and she had her group of friends. You want to talk about what you will bring, who you are, what you're looking for. But calling our office and saying, I don't want to live with this person because I think maybe they might have some views different from me, or they are different from me, or they identify different from me, we will not be able to make those changes. And so that's something that you're going to need to dig a little deeper in terms of figuring out, so what can I learn from this person? What can they learn from me? And how are we going to live comfortably together? We do have what we call roommate agreements. It is not a legally binding contract in any way, shape, or form. But after that first week or two of classes, when that honeymoon phase has died down a little bit between roommates, we are going to hand out and have them talk through these roommate agreements. The best thing about roommate agreements isn't necessarily what they write in the lines, is that they're having conversations that they maybe never thought to have before. What items are shareable? What items are off limits for each other? How are we going to split up food and the use of our mini fridge? How do we feel about TV? What time are we actually going to say lights out? Do I need noise when I study? Do I need silence when I study? What are our responsibilities to each other in terms of taking out the trash. Do we have to make our beds every day? Can I remind you that you should wash your sheets once a week? You know, different things like that, to really talk through things that maybe they hadn't thought about before. It's also very important they talk about each other's expectations when it comes to guests. Who is allowed in the room? How long can they stay? Can they sit on my bed and use it for a couch? Those types of things are really important to talk about, because what might not be a big deal to me might be a very big deal to you. And so we really do ask students to start those conversations, have those conversations with each other, so that they can see where those sticking points are and figure out how they're going to work through them should they come up in the future. Because they will come up in the future. When you take a couple people and you put them in a very small space living together for a period of time, there will be conflict. And so Shannon's going to talk a little bit more about some options for how we work through that with students.
Oh yes, Alicia, there is conflict. And I will say, if there is any job security that myself and my staff have in the fall semester, it is working through situations with students when they're having conflict with their roommates. And so the first thing that I want to say about roommate conflicts to you all as parents, and even for you students, if you're listening to this, is that conflict is normal. It will absolutely happen. And so please don't think that you're failing at college, or you're failing at adulting, or that your student is failing at those things if they have conflict with their roommate. Just as in any relationship, there are points where there are things that both parties disagree on, or all parties disagree on. And so please go into that, into your roommate situation with that mindset. The key, and I think this is common sense, but we forget it so much as human beings, is that the key to relationships is to communicate and to not let the issues that you have fester. One of the things that my staff always hears when they are mediating roommate conflicts is that, let's say the roommate conflict is taking place, or it has really blown up, and it's December. And a lot of I'll say the faults or the sins between the roommates started in August or in September, and the anger just grew and grew and grew, and there wasn't any conversations to handle those things when they were smaller and more manageable. And so you get several months in and you have this whole laundry list of things that we need to work through. And so it's really important that that communication is established and they get used to having those really great beneficial conversations, because again, as Alicia said, that one of the most powerful experiences of residential living is getting to know somebody else and learn from somebody else. And not just learning from somebody else, but learning how to work through things with somebody else. Those are really super valuable skills in adulthood. And one of the things I think is important for you to talk with your student about is that if they have selected to live with someone from high school, is that they have that conversation with their high school friends about how things might change. You are one person in high school, and you're a different person when you start college, and you make new friends, and you have different goals, and your lives may move in a different direction. Will that cause animosity? Will that cause conflict to occur? And so those sort of conversations are very important to have if your student is living with somebody from high school. Some folks in our housing profession even say it's not a good idea to live with someone from high school because those expectations can change, or who somebody is can change so dramatically in college. And that growth is good, that growth is important, but it's one thing to be aware of, and then that can be a point of contention or a potential point of contention. And probably, a lot of folks ask us, what is the number one thing that people have conflicts about? And I would answer that very clearly to say guests, specifically overnight guests. And so conflict often erupts from, a partner coming to stay for the weekend, or even, people coming to visit and watch the game that's on television, or whatever is happening. And what I want to say to you parents and students, if you're listening, is that guests can only be in a room if your roommate agrees to it. With COVID-19, we're changing our policy in terms of the number of guests in a room. There's only one guest per resident that will be allowed. And hopefully that will be helpful with some conflict. but also we really want you to know that guests need to have the permission of the roommate in order for them to be present. And that is the rule that really overrides everything else related to guests. Because we often hear, again, several months into the semester, you know, my roommate's girlfriend has been here for 20 nights. And I hate hearing those sort of things because we could have stopped it a lot earlier if folks would have been talking and also were knowledgeable about our policy. So that conflict, again, it will happen. Don't worry. We as a housing staff are there to help your student work through that. We don't expect them to be pros at managing conflict. Our RAs are trained and our hall supervisors are trained in helping to get your students moving forward and addressing that conflict and being happy once again. But sometimes your student and their roommate cannot be happy once again. And that is what we have a room change process for. We do recognize that if it's just not a situation that can be mediated, we are not going to ask students to painstakingly go through a difficult relationship with one another. That's not what we are about. So if mediations are not successful and it's not a situation that can be remedied, we do have our room change process, which opens after the first 2 weeks of classes have concluded. It is an online process. And so by going to our housing website, your students can fill out the room change process form if they would like, and it's a very easy form and they can walk right through it. That request will be funneled to our staff and we will communicate with them via email about what that process will look like. What's really important to know is that let's say your student has their roommate move out, and maybe that is due to a room change, or maybe that person left the university for whatever reason, is sometimes students think, yay, my roommate left. I have this whole space to myself. I'm going to push the beds together and make this my own palace. While that may seem like a good idea, it's not, because one student only occupies 1/2 of the room. And so our office has the right to assign a student into any empty bed space at any time. Now, we try to provide notification, and I think that our office does a really great job of that. But please remind your student that if they have an opening in their room, that they can only occupy 1/2 of it. Now, if they do have an opening in their room and they have a friend down the hall or in another building on campus that they would like to pull in as their roommate, we welcome that. That's great. But please let us know that as soon as the vacancy becomes available in the room. Because a lot of times what students do is they kind of cross their fingers and really, really, really hope that we don't assign somebody there. And then when we decide to assign somebody there, they're like, oh wait, I had a friend that wanted to move in. And that disrupts some of our process. So please let us know as soon as possible when there's a vacancy, if there's somebody that you desire to have pulled in. So, all right. Well, we're going to move on to another big question, and I think this is the part of the presentation that I'm looking forward to talking with you the most about because I think it's so relevant for parents. And that is what happens if your student isn't connecting and you're really worried about them. And again, just like the roommate conflict portion that we just talked about, connecting can be difficult. I remember my first year of college like it was yesterday. And to be real, I really didn't connect until November with a community, with a group of friends. And those first few months were very hard. I went to a college where I didn't have anybody from my high school there, and I didn't have anybody to lean on. And it was a really lonely time. And I made a lot of efforts to join organizations and to try to do things that would connect me. But friendships and relationships aren't made overnight. And so I want you to know that it's normal for your student to call you crying that they're having a hard time because it is a huge step in life. It is a big transition point. And so we ask you to be a partner with your student in helping them realize that those feelings of loneliness and just overall, missing their friends and missing their dog and all of the things from home are really normal. And so the question that I want you to ask your student is when they call you in the middle of the night, let's say, very upset about something and not connecting, I want you to ask them, what do you want me to do? Do you just want me to listen? to you vent and share these things, or is this something that's to the level that maybe there's some parent intervention that needs to happen? Now, I believe a lot of college students are really, really capable of handling things themselves because you have equipped them with all of those skills. But sometimes there are situations where a parent might want to call and might want to investigate what's going on in helping your student. And we are, of course, agreeable to answering those questions, and we do those sort of things all of the time. But what isn't helpful is that a lot of times we pick up the phone and we hear, and parents start the conversation with, "Don't tell my student that I called." Because probably the number one rule that we have is that we involve students in the process. We involve students in their success here at the university. And so what I want to do and what my staff wants to do is pull your student in and ask them questions and get them connected into the right places. And so if you find yourself calling and wanting to intervene in that way, just know that's very normal for us to say, let's get your student on the phone, or let's bring your student into our offices so that we can have a conversation. We'll probably do a lot more of that online and on the phone with COVID, but still we will involve your student. Now, probably the best person for you to call if you decide that you want to call is a person in our department with the title of coordinator. The coordinators are our full-time master's level staff members, and they oversee our residential areas directly. And if you go on our website, and if you go to our staff directory and click on the Residence Life tab, you will find the staff members in the buildings that they are responsible for. Those full-time staff members, they know the most about what's happening in those particular communities. And so I know sometimes you may look at their faces online and you may think, oh man, they look really young, but I promise you they have master's degrees and they have a lot of training and they're really, really good at their jobs and they know what's going on. Sometimes parents call directly to our director, or they call directly to Alicia or myself. And the three of us, we aren't in the day-to-day operations of what's going on specifically with students and their relationships in the halls. That's why we have our coordinator staff. And so please call your coordinator, your student's coordinator, and they will give you the answers that you desire, especially all those details will be present. And again, know that we will work with your student to come up with a solution that is best for everyone. And as a final tip about this and calling and any concern that you have, whether your student's connecting or not, is that please remember that there are two sides to every story. And so I've heard a lot of parents say, oh, it sounds like you're taking a very neutral stance about this issue. And we are, because we realize that there is one side of the conflict and then the other side of the conflict, and we want to be fair to both parties. We don't want to strongly take the side of one person just based on a phone call when there's other details of the situation for us to understand. So we will work with all groups to make sure that we address your problem or your concern, I promise. All right, I think that is it for all of our hot topics and questions that parents might have. So Alicia, I'll hand it over to you with some final thoughts.
So, Shannon mentioned who to call and when to call and what that looks like. And right now, your student doesn't have an assignment. You don't know who their coordinator is. You don't know what building they're going to live in. And so, as you look at my role in the administrative area versus Shannon's role in the residential life area, right now, your questions are pretty general, and you will interact with my side of the office most often. Right? We are answering the general housing email and the general housing phones and the assignment phones. And so you are working with me and my staff pretty much until your students arrive to campus. After move-in, even though I may have done that initial assignment, I am not the best person to talk through a roommate conflict with. And so after move-in, it is important that you interact with the residential life staff who oversee the hall where your student is living in order to get that question answered most efficiently and effectively. The other piece to remember, one of those conversations to have with your student this summer is to set up parent access and your parent PIN if you've not already done so. This can be done through the registrar's website here on campus. But when you call and you want to talk through the details of your student's housing assignment or their student conduct or their financial aid or student account, or what they were charged for this, that, and the other. There are a couple things we have to look at. One, the student can give access to some information and not the other. So you can say yes to housing, but no to conduct. And in order for us to speak to you as a parent, you'll have to give us that parent PIN that the student sets up. It is not because we don't want to talk to you and we think you might be a great partner to help us through whatever issue your student might be having, but we do follow FERPA and the law in terms of rights to privacy for our students. And so make sure, if you plan to be involved in these conversations with the university on behalf of your student, that your student has set up that access and that parent PIN, and they've told you what it is. So those are some important things. So how do you best get in touch with us right now? Many of us are working from home and teleworking from different places. What that means, we can have 3 phone lines ringing at the same time. It's only ringing in one person's house right now, and one person's computer. And so phones are a little bit slower than they have been in the past because they're ringing pretty constantly. And they will ring even more constantly after assignments go out in July. But there's only one phone line that can be answered at any given time. And so the longer you talk, the less other people are able to get through. And so those voicemails are going to build up, and then we also have to find time to return all of those. And so, yes, phones are a great way. I know emotionally, a lot of people just, get some sort of news or have a question, like, oh, I'm just going to give them a call right now. Yes, you can do that. We will be happy to interact with you that way. However, if you have a fairly simple question or you just want to know about a process, our email is housing@appstate.edu. Luckily, email like that, we can have multiple people in it at the same time answering various types of questions. We can share that as needed if it's a question that needs to go to a different office or a different place. And so email is generally the fastest way to get in touch with us. We do ask, if you have a time-sensitive thing, to maybe give us a call, because sometimes we receive emails on Friday night saying, oh, I've lost my key, what do I do? And the email's not going to be checked until Monday morning. And so obviously email is going to be fastest for your general questions at this time of year versus phones. You can also find us on Facebook, right? We encourage you to check out our Facebook. You'll see lots of photos of our residence halls. We did live video tours of a number of our halls a couple years ago. You can find those on our Facebook. All of these Housing 101 videos are available on Facebook as well as our website. And you can message us there too. So if you're already in and you see something that you have a question about, go ahead and hit that message button there, and we are able to answer questions that way as well. So we will continue to update these Housing 101 videos as we have different topics that come along. We will announce move-in plans once they are solidified and finalized and approved at the university level. And we are really excited to have your students back on campus this fall. We know it's going to look different for all of us. We know it's going to look different for you, but we are up to the challenge, and we look forward to meeting you in August. That being said, we hope you have a wonderful rest of your summer, and we will see you soon.
Thank you, everyone. We'll see you soon.
Bye-bye.